Let me introduce you to the gorgeous Fi Mims, who is renowned as one of Australia's leading personal brand photographers. Fi is passionate about working with female thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners to help elevate their brand and amplify their message in an authentic way, inspiring others to work with them. And over the last 10 years, Fee's work has taken her to Paris, San Francisco, Bali, Auckland, and interstate here in Australia. But her favourite place to work is in her hometown of Melbourne. So, welcome, Fee.
Thanks, Julie. It's really lovely, exciting, all the rest of it to be here with you. I'm chuffed.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to have you as a guest. And for those of you who know my recent photo shoot, it was done with fees. So now you
Yay.
know who to contact for awesome photos because I've just received the most amazing feedback on my photos, fees.
Oh,
I'll put it to
that's
you.
what I love to hear. It's okay for me to think that the shoot went well, but it's the feedback that counts. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
phenomenal. So really keen to dive into what you're doing today because you are so much more than a photographer and branding specialist. Like there's so many dimensions to you. But I always love to start with this question because I think it gives the listeners a really good insight into what's really important to our guests. And so the question is, if you were the leader of the world for a day, what would be the three things that you would do?
Oh, pressure. I have been thinking about this. The first two things came to me really quickly. The third one I was stewing on for ages, Julie. Um, the first one would be definitely around gender equality because that's a really big thing for me,
Yeah.
that women have their place in society alongside men and are equal in all ways. So I haven't put specifics in there, but things like quotas in politics, equal pay, definitely just policies around gender equality. Really big for me. That's the first one. Second one, access to healthcare for everyone, because I think that should be a basic human right. Oh, the third one was so tough. I ended up coming up with something a little bit different and quirky. I'm a mum of 13-year-old twins, so I battle with social media. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have iPhones or smartphones where it would be, you could just take all the apps off. I know you can kind of do that, but like phones where you just couldn't have them on, or you could make it so much easier to remove those apps or put them back on, because I find that is the biggest battle as parents.
Yeah.
And having watched my kids, and they've only had phones for like 18 months, 2 years now, with their social media, I just feel that it is too young for them to be thrown into that world in terms of their emotional maturity and how they communicate with people and the effects that negative social media can have on them. So I thought that would be something a bit different, but my third one, something around that.
Absolutely. I love what you would do for that. And of course, gender equality is something that, we've got International Women's Day coming up. And of course, there's always conversation on the table about gender equality around that, the week or the month even. But it needs to be a continuing conversation. And I'm so with you about that. It just needs to be, we don't seem to be making the progress. So I am, yeah.
It feels that way, doesn't it? I think we are making small steps, and any change in history has always taken a long time, hasn't it? But when you're in it, it can just feel so slow, particularly when you're the one being impacted. So
Yeah.
we just have to keep forging on, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, access to healthcare, it's been quite a common idea for people. So
There we
that's
go.
obviously really top of mind. And the social media, like apps and etc. for your twins, I think you're not alone in your concern there. So yeah, I'd love you to be leader for a day, Fee. Now, one thing you did do, which I absolutely loved just a couple of weeks ago, is you declared 2023 the year of brand building. And I just really love that you just put it out there. So, why do you believe that this is so important?
Oh, well, many reasons. I suppose I might first start with my story a little bit because, as you said, there's a lot of sort of dimensions, I suppose, to the work I do these days, but
Mm.
it all centers around personal branding. And first and foremost, I've been a personal branding photographer for coming up to 10 years now, although a photographer for about 20 years. And everything, I mean, I was one of those typical small business owners that worked very long hours and always felt I wasn't getting anywhere and really wanted to grow my business. But, you plateau as a one-to-one service provider. I went through burnout. And even though I loved what I was doing, I wasn't in love with my business. But I was doing personal branding for my clients. And suddenly I had that light bulb moment where I was like, I need to do this for my own business. And when I flipped that switch and started focusing on my own brand and showing up more and just having a clearer definition around who I was, what I do, who I serve, and talking about it more, everything changed in my business. That's when growth started to happen for me. So that is why I believe in the power of personal branding so much.
Mm.
Uh, and the reason why I have declared 2023 the year of personal branding is because it's always been important, but more than ever now, we need to rely on that connection we create with our audience and our followers to keep them in our community, to inspire them, and to be there for them when they decide they need what we offer. And personal branding is the answer to that. And of course, through COVID, I mean, the online digital marketplace was pretty saturated pre-COVID, but now post-COVID, it's elevated even more, that noise online. So to get yourself seen and heard is harder, and people's attention span is shorter. So personal branding for me is how you can break through those roadblocks and still be able to market and promote what you do and to connect with people at the same time.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And you're so right in terms of the marketplace is saturated. I mean,
Mm,
there are billions of us sharing so much information online at any one time. So it's like, why are people going to listen to you?
mm,
I think one thing that you're really good at is you seem to be really, really clear on the problems that your key clients have
mm.
in not being seen, not being heard, as well as they should be.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the more clarity you can have around who you want to work with and what problems they are solving, you can talk directly to them
Mm,
through your messaging, which is all around your brand. So I love working with, look, I work predominantly with women, but men as well on getting clarity on that area of their business, because I find a lot of small business owners, they feel lost. They don't know where to start. Social media is overwhelming. Marketing just in general and running a business is overwhelming. But I find once they get that clarity around, I call it their brand foundations, the purpose behind their business, who they want to work with, and what exactly they do, everything starts to feel a little bit easier for them because they have that direction and that focus.
mm.
So that, I think, getting those foundational brand elements for your business right is so important, but often it can be something that people leave on the back burner because we spend our time, okay, how am I marketing my business, or what can I do next, or I'll update my website, and it is tough because there are so many things at any one time that we can work on in our business. But I think that's a really important piece that I find a lot of people I am working with these days, when they work with me, it's like, I've realized that I can't avoid this any longer. Now's the time. They've been in business for so long, but it's like, okay, branding is important. I'll admit it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, burnout, you experienced that burnout and that you weren't in love with your business,
Mm,
which, I hate hearing that for people,
mm,
because I think it's incredibly important to be in love with your business, because it's tough. It is
yeah.
tough being an entrepreneur, and you have to get through so many challenges and motivate yourself every day. So I think that's really, really key. And, burnout is so common,
It's
so
so
common
common.
for everyone now.
Yeah. And look, I never had a day when I wanted to get up and do anything else. I'll just be
Mm.
clear about that. Like, it was just that I knew it could be easier.
Yeah.
It was just hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
really
That
hard.
hard word, I totally get
Yeah,
that. So from your work, and I know you've probably got a whole list, but what are the common reasons why people just don't want to show up or have a fear about it? Or, people
yeah.
like me when they show up to your studio and just feel like completely awkward.
Yeah, yeah. And some days I go like, "Why is it so hard?" But then when you think about it, you're like, "Yeah, I totally get it," because as soon as the focus is on us, all our vulnerabilities come up and we start to judge ourselves, but we also start to feel like others are going to judge us. And it's a term we're all really familiar with, but imposter syndrome rears its ugly head. Who am I to be in front of a camera and to be out and proud about who I am, what I'm doing, and and I think particularly our culture in Australia doesn't love that. I talk about the tall poppy thing with my husband a lot, and compare us to a country like America where they're like, rah, 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 yeah, look at her go. She's awesome, man. Whereas here, we're a little bit tall popping. Should she really be up there saying that? And I think whilst there's a lot more there's a lot more support amongst women and business owners to cheer each other on, we always have that fear that, what are they thinking of me? And all our imperfections come to the surface and we focus on what we don't love about ourselves rather than, well, hey, I'm out here and this is about my clients. Focusing, if we can flip that focus to who we want to serve and the fact that if we show up, we're there for them, I think that changes a lot. But it's really hard when, you have to start showing up because it's just uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's so much easier to just sit at your desk in your office and get the work done, isn't it? I relate to that. Like, I'm the same, even though I say you got to show up. Like, I always say to people, I'm the first person who's, who can resonate with how you feel, because I was like that for years.
Yeah, totally. And you're so right. It is that vulnerability and the imposter syndrome. And I think it's like, oh, I'll do it when I feel confident, or I'll do
Mm,
it when I've done whatever it might be, or when I've reached this level in my career, or,
yeah,
when I've done this. But it's like, you're never going to you're probably never going to feel confident. It's like a confidence is an action, and it's something that we have to do by stepping outside of our comfort zone, experiencing that discomfort. It's like, hey, I've done it. All right,
yeah,
let's do it again. Let's do it
yeah.
again. It gets more.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
I think it's Brené Brown who says you have to get comfortable with discomfort. And that's one of my favorite sayings, because you're right. You often won't feel fully confident, although you do gain confidence in your ability to do those uncomfortable things, don't you, over time? And
Yeah.
I was talking about that with the women in my membership just last week, that you can't wait to feel confident, exactly like you said, Julie, before you do something. You just have to take action, and then with taking action comes that confidence. But that first step is so hard, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I remember when I first like really started getting, I suppose, a lot more visible on LinkedIn, and I thought, oh my God, what are people going to say? Oh my God, what if I don't get a like? What if people don't like my stuff? Or what if someone jumps
Yeah.
on there and says something terrible? No one has jumped on and said something terrible. Yes, I've absolutely had no likes, but, it's and that's fine, because, people don't have to like your stuff, like, physically,
Mm,
press like, but people are seeing and they're noticing,
yeah.
and I get feedback about that all the time, so it's just something that you just get used to, I think,
Yes.
like you say.
Yeah.
I'm keen to understand, because 'cause I'm very big on mindset, and you mentioned something before about
Yep.
flipping the focus to your clients. So I'm keen to understand, like, is that one of your key mindset attributes that you adopted that enables you to push through the challenging times, or when you just don't feel like showing up? Like, what would you say are your key mindset attributes that just keep you moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I would say Definitely, I try to think about my clients, but also just the big vision I have for my business. I think that's what keeps pushing me through. And again, I think that's part of your foundational brand stuff that you should really work on, because if you have a really clear vision of where you want to go, that just becomes such a motivation for what you do in your business. Whereas if you don't have that big vision, it is so much easier to procrastinate or to not sort of take steps to move forward in your business. So, yes, and I suppose my big vision is around my clients, wanting to help women build successful businesses. So, yeah, those days when I don't want to show up, and I have them just as much as everyone else. Part of it is just, continually taking that action. And like we just said, it gets easier each time. And secondly, is just going, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to stay where I am and not help more people and not build my business and the life I want. So that big vision really motivates me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And by the sounds of it to me, is you're really anchored to who you want to be and the impact that you want to make. So it's just really keeping that top of mind and not
Mm,
having the regrets.
yeah.
Yeah. So looking ahead into the future, it's like, well, I don't want to regret not taking this
Yeah.
action because it could lead me closer to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fulfilling my vision.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of power in just reframing, isn't there? Just I
Yes.
use like tiny reframes all the time. Like, I know I can do this. I've done it before. If I show up today and just help someone, then that's all that matters. So many little reframes that I think we need to um, continually tell ourselves. Yeah.
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 I
And
love it.
mindset is such a big thing, isn't it, in
Oh,
business?
it's huge. It's huge. We're getting a good insight into yours through our conversation, Fee, which is really
Oh, good.
powerful. So, do you have some tips that you could share about how people can really get their authentic brand out there? Because I know that's a key thing that you do around that, real authenticity.
Yep. Yeah. So I suppose goes back to that getting that foundational piece right. I mean, obviously, photography, brand photography is a big part of my business. And anyone I work with, I always will chat to them and take them through certain questions that will ask them, how would you describe your business, in terms of what are your brand words? How do you want to show up? What's the stories you want to tell? Who do you work with? And how can you share your story with them through images, just to sort of get people thinking about that. And then I'll obviously help them in areas where they get stuck. But I suppose that's the first thing it comes back to, really understanding what you want to achieve in your business, who you want to work with, but also how you want to show up. Like, how do you want to inspire people as a leader, which, your work?
Mm.
How do you want to lead people? And I think there's, I suppose, another side angle, but leadership can be a scary word for people as well, can't it? Because
Mm.
leadership is like, oh, I'm not a leader, but just by showing up, you are leading people, you're leading your community. So how do you want that to look, and what do you want to be known for? Um, Obviously, getting some personal branding images is a great way to show up as your authentic self, but obviously there's a way to go about that as well, in terms of, just being yourself is really important.
Mm.
So, understanding what images will resonate with you and your audience. Yeah, and connecting with them through that imagery, but also, not being afraid to elevate who you are a little bit as well, which is part of it in business. Doesn't mean you're being fake by just sort of elevating yourself a little bit. And I suppose sharing content, sharing your skills, your thoughts, your opinions on things. That's, I think, I'm sure you would agree, that's a really important part
Mm.
of developing leadership for a community.
Yeah.
So there's some of the ways I think you can do it. But at the end of the day, it comes back to just being you, I think, in a
Mm.
personal brand sense.
Yeah,
Be afraid to be
100%
you
agree.
and be vulnerable and share with people.
Yeah, exactly. I saw an amazing quote, and I'll butcher this, but it was, you know, there's no point in trying to be someone else because they're already taken.
Yeah.
Just be yourself. just really connect, like you say, number one, just knowing what you stand for. Like, what are your foundations? And I know you ask around values. What are your values? Like, what's really important to you?
Mm,
Just really connecting to that, because I think, unfortunately, in our busy world, we lose connection to that all too easily, like all of those foundations. And I think it's fantastic that you bring people back to that,
mm,
through your work and through your Shine community and, your branding boot camp. I think that's an awesome thing that you do to get people really connected, because it's really super important in terms of leading your work, whatever you do, whether you're in a career or whether
yeah.
you're in a business.
Yeah, it's still
And,
important.
yeah,
And some of the women that come through my boot camp program where we do that work, some of them are really established, but it's important to remember that brands evolve as we do as well over
yeah,
the years. So, I had someone who's really established in business. And she went through it because she just wanted to revisit everything in her business. And she had some incredible takeaways. So you don't have to just be a startup to do this work.
yeah.
You should always be revisiting it. Like, have my values changed? Has my mission changed? Like, because we change, don't we? Just as we
Oh,
get older.
absolutely. And I think each year as you evolve, well, hopefully evolving and growing, obviously your values might change. You might have your
Mm.
foundational values, but other things might become, really important to
Yeah.
you, or if you experience a significant life event or something like that. So things change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the images, absolutely, it's got to happen. Do not have an iPhone photo of you cutting out, your with your arm around one of your friends or whatever with a silly pose, because when people are recruiting or when they're checking you out, of course they're going to go to LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you are and check out
Yeah.
those photos. So
Well, actually, going back to your earlier question about what stops people from being visible, I didn't include this, but it's a massive one. When you don't have a brand, and that would probably, a visual brand, let's say, like a website and imagery that you're proud of, you don't talk about what you do.
yeah,
So that's one of the reasons why I advocate for personal branding imagery as well, because if you have images that you love and that do reflect you in an authentic way, you are so much more likely to actually share yourself, share what you do, put that on social media. Yeah, I hear that all the time from my clients, which is great feedback. So all those little bits and pieces come together to help you show up.
yeah, 100%, absolutely. So, are there any final thoughts that you would love to share with our listeners today?
Maybe just reiterating that don't underestimate the power of your brand.
Mm,
Also, that branding isn't a quick fix, it's a long term thing that never stops. So,
mm,
put in the work, but then wait for the momentum to build as well. Because I think sometimes we get impatient in business and we want things to happen straight away. And branding really is an evergreen thing. Like, you do the work, but as we've been saying, you just always evolve and keep working on it. But if you do that work to start with, it does pay off in the long run. Um, don't be scared to show up. People are out there and they want what you offer. They need you. Like you said, Julie, about showing up on LinkedIn and not getting any likes. We've all been there, but we have to trust that there are people watching and listening. And, you and I would have plenty of times scrolled and watched or listened to something, but not actually hit that like button.
yeah,
You just take it and then you keep moving because that's the world we live in. So you have to trust that people are watching and listening to you and enjoying. The people that need you are enjoying what you're putting out there. And just, yeah, be proud of who you are. Be proud
yeah,
of who you are.
absolutely.
Believe in yourself first.
100%. And that's a beautiful way to finish, because that's where it all starts, is that belief in you. It's only owning you, all of your strengths and all of the things that, we're not perfect.
Mm,
We're imperfect humans. So just embracing that and just moving forward. Because like you say, the world wants to hear from you. The world needs you. Your community needs you. So
yeah.
absolutely. And in talking about, people need you feed. So I'm going to be sharing all of your links so where people can get in contact with you with the show notes. And thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing, all of your insights around this. And thank you for being the leader that you are.
Oh, thanks for having me, Julie, and letting me talk about what I love doing.
Awesome. Thanks,
It's
Fee.
been fun. Thank you.